Head into the unknown. Na, 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 na.
Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome back to Criminality, or if this is your first time here, welcome to Criminality. We are going to be discussing the first day of jury selection, which was damn close to being the only day of jury selection, because as of right now, there are 14 of the 16 jurors that have now been seated in the Richard Allen case. It's very quick. It's very, very quick. We have 8 women and 6 men so far, and they only need 2 more jurors. So tomorrow is going to be it for jury selection. So the plan today is to just touch on, obviously I was not in jury selection, but we do have a few people who were, that have gone live or are currently live. And so we're going to touch on some of the news that has reported on what they saw when they were in the courtroom today. And then we're also going to touch on what some of the YouTube creators and folks from what we consider more of a law tube, I'm gonna be talking about Andrea Sleuthy, so you're welcome to stay here, or you can go back there, whatever you want to do. I'm gonna cover her live. I'm gonna cover Lawyer Lee's live. We're gonna talk about Lana from Truth and Transparency's live, and like I said, we're gonna touch on some of the news stuff. So we're gonna try to do it all encompassing of anybody who was there and get it into one live. So that's kind of the plan. So I don't have any of my stuff up, so I figured I'm going to be playing a lot of stuff anyway, so I didn't bother to turn my camera on. But I'm going to say hi to you guys really quick. Thank you guys for being here. I know that there are a couple people that are currently live right now that are keeping the majority of the Delphi chatters occupied. So we'll see them whenever they get here, if they get here in time. Otherwise, we'll see them on the replay crew. But thank you guys for being here. Day one, essentially, we almost have a jury selected. So the way that it goes in, you know, I don't, yeah, honestly, Sleuthy, I think that there's something else going on with my health, and I've got to make some doctor's appointments because I'm struggling with my sinuses in my head. So I don't know. I can't get, every time I think feel better, I don't feel better, and it's just another fucking nightmare. So, but we're not going to let it hold us back right now. So we're going to keep going, and we'll figure that out later. Hi, Christine. Good to see you. So anyway, we have 14 of the 16, the way they do it in Indiana, which is also interesting to me because most of the time they have, you know, they send out 600 questionnaires, and obviously not all of those people are going to return the questionnaires. Some will, you know, just pretend like they never got their jury summons, you know, yeah. And some of you guys play that too. Remember, do your jury duty service. So they sent out the 600. They had groups coming in today, and they typically will take the amount of people that come in. They'll kind of arrange them by what the questionnaire answers are, or they'll arrange them by number of, like, their actual juror number. So, and I've seen both happen. So in this particular circumstance, they just pick them and put them straight on a jury, which I think is crazy to me. Normally they go through a whole bunch of them. They narrow it down to a bigger pool. So we'll say like 500 show up. You know, they'll go through like the first half, like 300 or 250. And then they'll narrow the entire group down to like 50 or 60. And then they'll take those 50 or 60 and they'll break it down to who they're going to pick and put on the jury. Well, they don't do it that way here. So it's really weird. Like, how do they not know if somebody better is going to come along and just be a better, who they would think would be a better juror, but they don't really do it that way. So they are organized in the fact that I think that they brought these people in based on what I'm hearing from the people who are in the courtroom. They brought these people in based on their answers to the jury questionnaire. Obviously, once again, I want to clarify, I was not in there, so I'm going off of a lot of secondhand information, which, you know, most people will be, so we're going to take it for what it is. But that seems to be the general consensus on how they were brought in. So we have the first 12 that get seated are your jury. The other 4 that get seated are your alternates. So unlike other trials we've watched where they don't know who the alternates are going to be, they just seat a whole bunch of people or a whole bunch of jurors and then later pick them. These people right out the bat, no, you're the first one on the jury, you're the second one on the jury, you're the third one on the jury, and then the other 4 are alternates. So they have 14 currently selected, and I'm sure that we'll hear it when we're going through some of the updates from today from people who are in the courtroom. But it appears that there's at least one that's still on the cusp, and they're supposed to decide tomorrow what they want to do with her. She was selected for the jury, but is having believes she would have childcare issues. So they're going to decide tomorrow. So we could be brought back down by one and then have to add another. But I think it is what it is. So let me say hi to you guys in chat really quick. I thank you guys for being here. Like I said, we're going to try to cover everybody so that we can get it all in one spot and without, you know, taking too much away from their channels, but giving all the information we can in one location. So hi, Kathy. Hey, Alligator. Wish we could see Nick with his long hair all slicked back. I heard that Nick shaved his mustache. Oh, did you? I didn't hear that, Judge Jessica. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Thomas. I kind of behave here. Sleuthy Goosey might hit me with it. You got to behave. You got to behave. Hi, Melissa. And Christine G. 1, do you think he's guilty? 2, do you think Nick wears diapers? And 3, is the judge a gangster? No, I think she might be threatened by gangsters, but she's no G herself. Hi, Greenie. What's up, Kraken? Hey, Jancy. Hi, Miss Mala. Oh, goodness. Doesn't seem like enough time to dig into further probe and question these folks, but what do I know? I agree with you. It just seems super fast. Hi, Just Deb. What's up, Lacey? Let me see who's up here. Hey, Puppy Power. Good evening, T. So glad you're covering all of them. Some I couldn't watch because they talk too much and seem to be all over the place. I think we'll make it. We'll try to narrow all of it down. Let's see who else is up here. True Crime Fangirl. Hey, Mez. Good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while. Hi, Susan. BGOG's in the house. Hi, Carrie. What's up, Scarlet Letter? Hi, Necessary Evil. True Crime Fan. We're waiting for this all fucking day. Thank you for doing this. You're very welcome. What's up, Indy Cindy? Hey, Christy. Let me go back down here. Hey, Cryptex. What's up, Ronnie? Hey, Joanna. Okay. Hey, Northern Light. I think I may have missed a couple. What's up, Sunflower? Hey, Johnny. Susie Q. Susie Q. Susie Q. We're just getting started. So jury selection is scheduled to take Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thursday, they would essentially be swearing in the jury, travel to Carroll County, and probably, I believe, probably Wednesday afternoon, Thursday, the judge will be going through any of the motions that are still pending, all the ones that she said that she'd kind of take care of closer to trial, which is like now the jury view that she has to make a decision on, the motion in limine regarding Tobin. So she has a couple things that they have to kind of go through for motions before the trial actually gets started. So that'll happen. And then no matter how quick this jury is selected, which it will be by tomorrow, obviously at this point, the opening statements will be in Carroll County on Friday, no matter what. So they could have had a jury today and it wouldn't have changed the fact that they're going to have opening statements Friday. So we'll start with a couple news clips, and then we're going to talk. Lana said she might stop by and kind of give us some info on her trip up there and what she saw. She actually did a quick an hour worth of a live where she was leaving the courtroom and kind of gave some updates. But Lana is doing another live later tonight to cover her notes of what the jurors like what actually happened in the courtroom and so on. So she'll have a second live tonight also. Hey, Carla. Hey, everyone. What a day. I need to take a day off and go watch the trial, but I'm not a morning person. Carla, you should do it. You should do it. You should try to get in there. It'll be tough because you guys are people who are going to be in line are going to have to be in line at like the butt crack of dawn. Okay. So let's start with just a couple news clips, see what the news is saying, and then we're going to go into the people who are actually there. You hit Cryptex? Man, Cryptex got hit right when he came in. Dang.
For years, and jury selection in the highly anticipated.
Okay, so just let me know that you guys can hear it before we keep playing, and you guys should be able to, but I just want to make sure you can, because we're going to get right into it. So, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Hi, Hybrid. The snowman comment. I know, that was fucking crazy. Sounds good. Okay.
The Delphi Murders trial has just finished for the day. It comes more than 7 years after the murders of the two teens.
Years of investigative and legal twists and turns have led to this moment. Jurors are being selected for the trial of this man, Richard Allen. Allen is charged with the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German in 2017.
The jury pool is being drawn from the city of Fort Wayne. CBS 4 has team coverage tonight at 5. CBS 4's Russ McQuaid and Max Lewis were both in the courtroom today for jury selection. They join us outside the Allen County Courthouse. Good evening, Russ. Good evening, Max.
Good afternoon, Bob and Chelsea. Good afternoon. We've just got the latest from the courtroom. One, the good news is we've shut down for the day. Two, we have 12 jurors max. As a matter of fact, we got 2 more. That means we got alternates. We got 2 to go.
Yeah, that's right. We got 14 total, 6 men, 8 women is the last that we heard. And that is after 5 rounds of jury selection today. However, we have just gotten some word that there was apparently an issue. That announcement was made in court. There was apparently an issue with one of the jurors. So we have 14 jurors right now. That number could change, especially if there was an issue and one might be leaving. That could be a possibility.
We will be back here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to pick those 2 alternate jurors. Then Judge Gull intends to hold some hearings on motions that were made today. Max, I think what's interesting is when you sit through enough of these rounds, and we went for marathon sessions today. There was no lunch break. Right. When you go through marathon rounds, you can pretty much determine where the prosecution, where the defense are going simply by the types of questions they're asking jurors, such as, what would you think of this and what would you think of that?
Yeah, absolutely. The prosecution, just to start off with them, they were asking jurors, what kind of evidence do you need in order to convict? Do you need DNA? Do you need a murder weapon? Do you, how much evidence do you need? Sort of an indication of where they stand and sort of what we know about their case from the public filings is that, there isn't a lot of some of that hard evidence that they got. On the defense side, they're also, trying to already poke holes in the case and trying to see how trusting people are of police officers. They were asking that question a lot. How much do you trust, authority and government figures and things like that? I
was stunned and amazed today, Max. We're in here for the long haul through Wednesday afternoon. We were thinking, looks like we'll be done by noon tomorrow, picking a jury. Then we've got some downtime in the middle of the week. We all go to Delphi on Thursday, swear in that jury. Testimony starts on Friday. But I would have thought, coming from Fort Wayne, this is a 2-hour drive from Delphi, that folks would have been a lot more reticent about serving on this jury. Let's face it, this is going to take a month out of their lives. They're going to be bussed across the state. They're going to be away from their families, social media, and news, and they're going to be holed up in a hotel in Lafayette to help solve a crime that didn't happen in their town.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big question. It was a question the judge asked of everybody. How would you deal with being sequestered for a month? You're away from your family. You're going to be spending time with the 15 other people that are on the jury, the 4 alternates, the 12 jurors. It was a big question. A lot of people did have a lot of issues. People brought up family they had to take care of, illnesses, doctor's appointments, you name it. Everybody brought it up. And I'm sure it was considered somewhat, but I mean, there were a lot of people that had issues with it, but also a lot of people said they could make changes if need be.
What can you tell us about biographical sketches of some of the people that will serve on this jury?
Yeah, so we know of those 6 men and 8 women, we do know some of their jobs. They aren't required to disclose it, but that's a common question. They include a nurse. There was a man who works at a local school district in the transportation department. There was a FedEx delivery driver. There was a school counselor also involved in that. And again, 6 men, 8 women. We don't know their ages, but they all appear to be sort of middle-aged, some older, some younger. It's a good mix, really.
And Bob and Chelsea, one of the, I guess, not totally surprised, we didn't see a lot of family members from those involved in this case. We saw only Abby Williams' grandparents here. Nobody from Libby German's side of the family, nobody from Richard Allen's side of the family. That, of course, could be due to the fact that they're expected, Bob and Chelsea, to be called as witnesses.
Well, Russ, we saw Richard Allen walking into the courthouse there. What was his demeanor as this whole process unfolded today?
Max, you and I have been watching Richard Allen walk into this courthouse in Carroll County Courthouse. I got to say, he looked, frankly, cleaned up, a little healthier and a little different today.
Yeah, and this was also very different because this is the trial portion. So he's not in his normal, jumpsuit that he's in. He is in normal clothes. He was wearing just khakis, a purple button-up shirt. He was unshackled in front of the jury. It's probably one of the few times that he's been out in public in the past 2 years, not in handcuffs and things like that. You know, during one of the breaks, we had a very brief 5-minute break. He was standing up. He was talking with his attorney, Andrew Baldwin. He was he participated heavily in jury selection, was discussing with his attorneys which jurors to pick. He seemed very animated, much more animated than I have ever seen him. Normally, he's very stoic, just sort of sits there.
And then just, Bob, on a lighter note at the end, Max was talking about some of the reasons folks said they couldn't serve on this jury. One that struck both me and Max. One man straight off said to the judge, I am a psychic, I'm an empath, I'm in touch with the emotions in this courtroom. I've already made a decision on this case, and if I were to serve, I would be very beneficial to the prosecution. I don't think he made the cut.
No, he did not make the cut. He did get a little bit of a chuckle from the courtroom, didn't make the cut. The other interesting one, there was a guy who said that they were asking about witness credibility, and he said that he doesn't really trust people who wear the color green. So that was one of his bars for how much he trusts witnesses. That got a little bit of a chuckle from the courtroom, too.
So they dismissed one juror because he said he was psychic, which we heard that early this morning through all the Twitters and the news stations. But then they also had to dismiss somebody else because he doesn't trust the color green. Like what? Doesn't trust people who wear the color green. That's how you get out of jury duty. Apparently, you tell people, I'm sorry, I'm not really a big fan of the color blue. And so if you wear blue, I won't be able to believe anything you say. I don't know if somebody actually had on the color green today. That would be interesting to know, like if one of the attorneys was wearing green. I haven't heard anybody mention that. Oh, so you did? I didn't hear that. Sleuthy said, I also heard that someone was dismissed as someone in their family was murdered in California. Oh, dang. Okay.
We've got 12 jurors. We've got 2 alternates. We come back tomorrow morning for 2 more alternates and motions to be heard. Live in Fort Wayne, I'm Rosa McQuaid with Max Lewis, CBS 4 News.
All right, thanks to both of you. We'll be getting the latest from inside the courtroom from both of them over the next several weeks. Jury selection, always an interesting process.
Ain't that a fact, Christine G? Ain't that a fact? This is almost
hear how the prosecution and defense are kind of working through who they want to sit on the jury.
Absolutely.
All right, the grandmother of Libby German reacted to the start of jury selection on Facebook today. She wrote in part, quote, "We have waited over 7.5 years for this. It all seems like a dream that is about to turn into a nightmare. I have thought about this day and tried to prepare for this day for years, but in the end, can anyone really prepare for something like this?" It is important to remember the 2 young girls really at the center of all of this.
Abby and Libby were best friends. They were both at the 8th grade in Delphi Community Middle School. Abby was 13.
We know those details. So next I'm going to bring up, so Barbara McDonald was somebody else who was actually in the courtroom today. And so she's been tweeting. I'm sure she'll end up on Court TV at some point to review that. And if it does happen while I'm live, let me know. If not, we can probably just watch it later, and then we'll touch on it during tomorrow's recap. So at the end of that stream, they were talking about a post that Becky Patty had put up, whom, if you guys aren't aware, Becky Patty is Libby's grandmother. She was her guardian at the time. And she put up a post just essentially saying, like, they've waited for so long and now they feel like they're kind of overwhelmed. One of the things that Barbara does tell us on her Twitter is that the only family she saw in the courtroom today, when we heard it also on that news segment, was that Libby's family wasn't in the courtroom, and only Abby's grandma and step grandfather were actually in the courtroom, which I found very interesting. I found interesting that they've normally gone to every single thing, and maybe so they're just like, maybe they know that they have a lot coming up with the trial, and they're like, okay, we don't really need to be in on the jury selection, so we'll just let them handle that part, and we'll just come to trial. So, hey Dan, my Illuminati checks are going to dry up soon. Oh shit, that's not good. That's not good, Dan. Bob will be there. Bob will be there in Carroll County on Friday for opening statements. He's planning on going and starting. His venture is starting Friday. I know a ton of people are planning on being there. I mean, I just keep getting messages about how many people are planning on going to the trial. And I think people are not realizing that there's a very, very good chance they are not going to be getting in. They're not going to be getting into that trial. So this is a photo that Barbara had posted earlier, way earlier, when they were waiting in line to go in. So you can see like a small group of people had already ventured into to the line. We do know that like I already said, Barbara McDonald was there as one of the news representatives. Russ McQuaid said he was going to be in the courtroom, but he was not there as the news correspondent. He had somebody else who from his news station named Max that was actually going to be sitting in for the news. We know that Lawyer Lee was there. We're going to touch on her live. We know that Andrea Burkhart made it in, and you can see her actually standing in line here. Andrea Burkhart made it in, and we're going to touch on her live also. Truth and Transparency, Lana made it in. She's standing in line over here. You can see her. And anybody who is interested in knowing what the murder sheet had to say, you're welcome to go listen to their podcast, because I will not be going over what they have to say. So there's Lana right there. I didn't wear my hat, but yes, I'm there. Gray top, black bottoms. So I know I can see you. I can see you with your glasses and your hair up. If I went, I would take donuts to Tobe. And the boots with the fur. Hey, Jenny. Hey, Unindicted. So I was listening to R&M's live earlier today, too, and they said that they thought that there was people who didn't make it in. I have not found out who any of those people were that didn't make it in today. If you guys happen to know, and it's somebody that ended up outside doing like some outside reporting, let me know, because I didn't see any of those people. All I know is they said that most of the people in line I thought made it in. So TT, you didn't make it in? It was you? You didn't get a seat? How many people didn't get a seat then? Damn, that sucks. I thought most people actually did make it in. Okay, so we're just gonna touch on Barbara's notes, and then we're gonna hit up the the folks that are on YouTube that were in the courtroom today. Just Deb said I did a drive-by. I didn't get there until like 8:15. Oh, okay. I think these other guys were in line at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, it seems like. All right, let's see. I already had it pulled up, and then I hate Twitter. It's so dumb. So she says, like, super long day in court today. 14 jurors were selected. 2 more are needed. There could be a childcare issue. We already touched on that. So let's back down. Let me go down here. So she says the only family she saw, we touched on this, was Diane and Eric Erskine, which is Libby's grandmother and step-grandfather. Let me make this bigger for you guys. The defense added some people to their witness list that were not previously on there. I sent you screenshots, although you didn't need to go to Twitter. Oh, shit. Did you? Let me go over. Yes, you did. Shit. I was already on Twitter. Sorry. Hey, BJBC. Hey, Odd Structure. What's up? Play my jams. Play my jams. Play my jams. The defense added people to their witness list that were not previously on there, which I found the names interesting that they weren't actually on there. Like Doug Carter. I mean, obviously he's going to probably be on the prosecutions. And Tony Klein, which we know that they had requested for Keegan Klein to come, so Tony Klein makes sense. Mike Patty, Logan Holder, and Robert Ives. We were talking about this like 2 or 3 lives ago about if the defense would call Robert Ives. And I mean, they're adding him to the witness list. So the state added some witnesses also that they didn't have previously listed. Becky Patty, Anna Williams. The state didn't have Derek German on their witness list. Nicole Robertson and Brad Weber. Brad, if you guys remember, Brad Weber is Kay Weber's son, who's the property where the end of the bridge, where the kidnapping, quote unquote, would have happened. And no, they cannot. There's no live tweeting. They cannot even have They cannot bring electronics into the courthouse at all. So everything that anybody who's in the courtroom is doing is supposed to be by old school pen and paper. That's it. Yeah, I mean, like some of these people, I'm like, how were you not on the witness list to begin with? How did these guys skip the witness list in general? So I think that was just very, very odd. Let me go down this one. Let me see. Nicole Robertson is the FBI. She wrote the PCA for Ron Logan. And so Prosecutor McClellan said BG used the gun. Okay, hold on. Let's go to this one first because this one's more important. So during these opening statements that the defense had actually requested and the judge granted, she gave each side time to just give a mini opening statement to the jurors, the potential jurors. And during Nick's little mini opening statement, he says the case is about 3 things. One is Bridge Guy. Calls him Bridge Guy, which is a total social media, name for whoever is on that bridge. But I mean, so he calls him Bridge Guy. He says it's 3 things: Bridge Guy, a bullet, and the brutal murder of 2 girls. This is frustrating to me because it's not actually a bullet; it's an unspent round. It's not even a bullet. The bullet is part of it. But I'm not going to get too far into that because that's part of the only ballistics tool marking stuff I'll be able to actually talk too much about. But so 3 things: Bridge Guy, a bullet, and the brutal murder of 2 girls. It says BG used the gun he had to force the girls down the hill, and he killed Abby and Libby. His intent was to have his way with them, but got interrupted. He could do whatever he wanted with them, but he got interrupted. So in this statement, this case is about 3 things. Just think about that. Bridge Guy, which is your video, it's talking about like the evidence, right? This is literally what he's telling you. Evidence-wise, Bridge Guy, Libby's video that she took on her phone, a bullet, which isn't the bullet, it's actually an unspent round, and then the brutal murder of 2 girls. There's nothing else there. All this bombshell info that's supposed to be coming out, they don't have. They're not talking. That's not what he's Nick McClelland, the main prosecutor in the case, is telling us. They don't have the evidence. They don't have anything else besides what we already knew. Saying interrupted is dumb. Yeah, he's going to have to be able to prove that. Hey, Charmaine. Hey, Tony. Well, at least this isn't his opening statement for the actual trial. If there's something else, he's telling the juries, the prospective jurors right now, the case is 3 things: the video, the bullet, and the girls. That's it. And the brutal murder of 2 girls, in my opinion, he's talking about the confessions. So he's saying his evidence right here, evidence is Libby's video, the unspent round, and Richard Allen's confessions. That's what he's right there. That's his entire case. Yep, necessarily. That's what I think. I think that's what he's meaning by that. But he tried to make this whole little play on words with all the B's. So, I mean, for anybody who was expecting that there's going to be some other big thing, there isn't. There isn't. And the fact that, in my theory, if you guys were here with me on Saturday, my theory about it being Richard Allen had to do with him being interrupted. So I think that's interesting too. That I actually said that Brad Weber would be one that was interesting. Not that Nick McClelland's fucking listening to me. That's not what I mean by this, but it just kind of triggers me that they added Brad Weber. Why wouldn't Brad Weber, if Brad Weber was the one who interrupted him, which was part of my theory, why wasn't he already on the fucking list? Why wasn't Derek German already on the list? So, I don't know. Here's a B he forgot. Bubkiss. And Bubkiss. Okay, so let's go into, I don't want to play all their stuff. I want you guys to be able to go and listen if you choose to, but I do want to touch on some of the things they said, but obviously I don't have things time-stamped. So if I skip around or I pause a lot, if you play somebody else's stuff, you guys know you have to have fair use, number one. Number two, I respect both the people, the lawyer parts that were in here. Like I said, Alana's going to go live later and go through her actual notes. She did do a little rundown, but I mean, I respect all the people and I don't want to take away from their channel either. So if you want to go watch the entire thing, please do so. But I do want to touch on what they were saying. Like I said, I want to try to gather all the info into one spot. So we have it. Let me see what you guys are saying before we start this. Hey, Sniper, I will be home tomorrow, so I will email you all the Toolmark data and research materials I put together a few months ago. Some of it is directly from Illinois CSI Toolmark Handbook. That would be awesome, Sniper. And if you are willing, or if you're feeling up to it, we do have, now that we know that they already have the majority of the jurors, tomorrow is going to be a very short day. And we could plan something if you were up to wanting to come on and go through it. I'd be happy to have you. There's going to be more evidence, plenty more. Scarlett, I hope you're right. I don't agree with you, but I hope you're right, because as of right now, if there's that, Nick's telling us there isn't anything else. But I couldn't find Indiana's manual online, but somewhat assume that most of the processing data is the same state by state. Probably. Yeah, what if they call Nicole Robertson and she says Ron Logan? I think what they're going to try to do is, because they put Nicole Robertson on the state witness list. And so in my opinion, they'd be like, okay, did you find any of this stuff? And then she's going to be like, no, we didn't. So did you guys close out the chapter on where you were investigating Ron Logan? I think they're going to use that. I think that that's what Nick would have her do. But that's just, obviously, that's just my opinion. I have no idea. So let me back it up a little bit. We'll go back to the beginning. So this is Lawyer Lee. If one of the wrenches in the chat could put her channel in here. Heather, why am I saying that? Because he's saying that the case is about Bridge Guy, a bullet, and the brutal murder of 2 girls. So he's telling you what the evidence is, in my opinion. He's telling you the video from Libby's phone. He's telling you the unspent round, and he's telling you the confessions. That's the 3 pieces of evidence he's talking about. That's my opinion of it. You guys can take it for what you want. Like I said, everybody's always welcome to their own opinion. Yeah, it's crazy what's happened in a year. Yeah, the defense that was kicked off the case almost exactly a month or a year from now, because what, they were kicked off the 18th, 19th of October. Okay, so this is Lawyer Lee's. I'm gonna skim through hers, and then I'll make sure that any of you guys want, I'll put all these videos that we do talk about are going to be in the description when this is done, so everybody can go watch them in their entirety.
Here in Indiana, where the case is happening,
Hey,
and
Kathy.
presently in Fort Wayne, which is where, so that's a relief. Always a relief, especially when I'm out of town and doing something different. So in about a month, we are going to know what the jury thinks. That's how.
Okay, I'm going to speed it up. If you guys think it's too fast, let me know, and I will slow it down.
We nearly have a jury. Very unusual for it to go this fast in a case of this overview, to kind of make you feel like you're there, of the courthouse and the rules and the layout, just so who was there, so you can sort of feel like, okay, I want to talk about what happened in jury selection. Shout out and thanks to everybody. That's a really smart idea, right? Although they then had to run them to the car, so you needed. And this is how big it was. Wayne is so pretty. What a day, but the sound is terrible. over here is where spectators sat with a group of 5 media. Can I do it right? 5 media sitting up there, 5 specially appointed media. They did it apparently by
It kind of gives
the
the
judge
idea
to sit
about
here
what
to
the
be
courtroom is like.
backwards, or if you'll be able to see it. Oh, good. I think that looks right.
I like both of the attorneys that are covering the case. My only struggle is because they're coming in with on the attorney side without the background, all the background of the case. So sometimes it's hard because you're like, you want to be able to like shout from the rooftops, like, no, that can't even be true because we already know XYZ. I know both of them have been doing their due diligence to catch up. And like I said, I have the utmost respect for both of them. And Lana, who doesn't cover Delphi exclusively, obviously, she still has, she goes through court documents and things like that, but not a lawyer. So it's like you get kind of a catch-22. Hi, Holy Schnikes. I hope that you are doing well. You have been in my thoughts and prayers.
Okay, so let's hold it up close. I don't have all my usual equipment here. There we go. Okay, so judge up here at the front where you would normally expect the judge to sit. Here's the jury box. The jurors sat here, and there was this large dead zone. I got to do my finger the opposite way in the middle. This over here, I can't do it. Over here is where spectators sat with a group of 5 media. Can I do it right? 5 media sitting up there, 5 specially appointed media. They did it apparently by lottery. There were a lot of complaints from media about how it was done. They didn't really care for that. But 5 people were selected as representatives of the media. Now, there were other media in the spectators that were seated over here. And that was all the room there was 4 by 5. So 20 people to get in the room plus 5 extra media. Now, this large dead zone in the middle consisted of 4 seats across and then the whole 5 rows. It is right there. And the reason the judge, plus the aisle between the 2 halves of the courthouse, and the purpose of that, we were told, I think it was by the bailiff, the purpose of that.
Angela says, you realize they are selecting a jury and are in no way going to discuss any evidence they have. Well, I would find that to be a very inaccurate statement since they did discuss evidence they have. So, I mean, you can't have it both ways and say that the evidence is the unspent round and then say that they're not going to talk about evidence because they did talk about evidence. Does that make sense? They are talking about evidence. They talk about the confessions too. It's naive to think that. Well, I mean, I guess I will wait to be proven wrong, but I doubt I will be.
Was that she wanted the jury to be able to be there with spectators, but not overhear anything that was said by the spectators, so there wouldn't be any risk of any kind of problem that would create a bias or cause a mistrial, anything remotely like that. Now, down here, all the way in the very back, I have to do this. Those were pews, really. They were wooden and reserved for family. One was labeled, what was it labeled? Victims' families, and the other was labeled defense. So not defendant's family, but defense. And the other was labeled victims' families. And there was a little sign handwritten on there, just taped on there. It was really pretty efficient and pretty well done to fill up.
Yeah, I think we haven't gotten to the other parts of what happens in the mini opening statements. So I will reserve anybody who is just thinking that off of what I have talked about, because there's still more to come. And you're going to hear what other type of evidence they say they don't have. But we'll wait, because like I said, I've been watching stuff all day and reading stuff all day, but I don't know if everybody has, so I'm just going to I'll reserve my commentary for that part.
But not overflow in the room that was allotted in the courthouse. It's a large courtroom, but the problem was she was bringing in panels of 52 jurors, and that took up a lot of the room. I feel like I'm kind of crooked. I'm trying to bring this up a little bit. Sorry if I'm crooked. All right, so let's head back over to our notes. So that's the layout to kind of give you a vision of what it looked like inside there. Now, I want to start with the mini opening statements because it's our first window into what the 2 sides will argue. The prosecution made 3 points from the beginning: bridge guy, bullet, and brutal murder, all B's, you'll notice. And those 3 points are going to be their theme: bridge guy, bullet, and brutal murder. They argued that Richard Allen used a gun to kidnap Libby and Abby, force him down the hill, quote, to have his way with them, do whatever he wanted.
Hi, honey. It's good to see you. I hope you're doing well. I haven't seen you forever.
So that sort of has an implication in English for those of you who aren't maybe native English speakers, but it has an implication that's more sexual. That apparently is not the issue here. So that wasn't what he intended by that, I don't think. He did say that Richard Allen had been interrupted, as if perhaps he had planned to do something more. Now, where's it coming from? Maybe the confessions. We don't really know it yet. That they had been forced to remove their clothes, and that the killer kept the clothes, then said that they were thrown in the creek. One of the things we had heard is that whoever the killer was took some tokens or things from the scene, and we wondered about whether any of those have been found, but there's not been a hint or suggestion that that has been found. The bullet is what was found between the girls' bodies in the ground. It was a bullet with what the prosecution said.
She says in the ground too, from her own notes, which I think is interesting. Not on the ground. She says in the ground. We've talked about this unspent round multiple times, that it was in the ground. And her notes, she says they said in the ground.
Is distinct marks on it that came from a gun owned by Richard Allen and found when they executed a search warrant of his home. Then finally, they argued that Richard Allen confessed to his wife, his mother, corrections officers, therapist, etc. And that ought to clinch it, is how they felt for the jury. Now, the defense was an interesting, they had asked for this mini opening statement. They were the ones pushing for it. It was very defensive the way they approached it, which was not really a surprise. They are the defense, but they didn't give an overview or statement. They just started right in with the confessions. And what they said was that he confessed to things that didn't happen. He confessed to shooting the girls in the back. And that just wasn't true, is what the defense attorney said. Confessed to and to burying the girls in a shallow grave. Neither of those happened, according to the autopsy and according to the way the girls were found. In other words,
so that was something new that we hadn't heard before, was that that he had confessed to burying the girls in shallow graves. So I was like, okay, that's not true either. So now we have more things that are coming out from these confessions that aren't true. I obviously I'm still going to wait to hear what Nick has to say about which parts are true, but
defense said he confessed to a crime he didn't commit. He's not the right guy. And they argued to the jury that the reason for this was solitary confinement, which he had been in for 4 months. And he was in prison. He should have been in jail. He was kept in solitary confinement, sleep deprived because the lights were left on, etc. And they even told us that we're going to see video of his life so that we will understand how significant the issues were for how he was being kept and how he was being retained. The bullet evidence, the defense argued, is open for interpretation.
Wait, hold on. Scarlet Letter says, because Nick also says they will learn about why and how he did it. That's interesting that you say that, because everything I have seen today, and we haven't gotten to it in this live yet, but they ask the jurors like what they need to be able to convict somebody. And one of the things they say is motive. And Nick apparently responds with, we don't have to provide that. Like, that's not part of our, like, we don't have a burden to provide motive. So I'm surprised that, I'm wondering where that came from. Let me know where you heard that, Scarlet Letter, so I can try to pull that up too and compare notes, because he's essentially, from my understanding, telling the potential jurors he does not have to tell them why.
Interpretation. And indeed, I will say this, bullet markings is pretty controversial in the criminal bar. It's very controversial about whether that's useful, helpful, or just inaccurate junk science. But he also talked about the phone of the victim being hard data. That wasn't really explained. I really want to know what he meant by that, and I don't really know. And talked about the inept, ill-equipped law enforcement.
So this is the defense's little mini opening. She's saying that Baldwin said something about that the victim's phone being hard data, but she didn't really understand exactly what he meant by that. But that's part of the evidence that they're going to present.
That refused FBI help that could have made a difference.
Oh, they also go into how much they're going to be pushing the inept investigation and inept investigators
in this case. So I have some, thank you. A chair fund. Yes, I think I'm going to need a chair fund. Thank you very, very much. I definitely need a chair when I'm sitting outside in Delphi. It's pretty cold too. I'm going to need some thick wool socks, I think. April, I would have loved to see me open that stool. I just could not stop laughing. It was so funny when I opened it, because I thought it was a real stool. I had no idea. It was so funny. Okay. Thank you, Crown Bird. Sandwich money. I definitely appreciate that. Hopefully we'll have lunch on other days. My father's alibi is a new member. That's wonderful. I appreciate that very much.
Don't know if you guys have all heard the snowman story, but people are talking about it in chat. And so I don't know. I don't remember which one. I know that Lana talks about it. I don't know if either of the attorneys do, but we'll find out if they do. But either way, so there was apparently, okay, so I'll backtrack for just a second. We talk about a lot about like direct evidence versus like circumstantial evidence, and people really, really want direct evidence. Like, that's what they say. They're like, you guys always hear people go like, this case is garbage. It's just circumstantial evidence. They don't have anything. But if you talk about what literally is Douglas film. Yeah, I do actually. So thank you though for your commentary. Anyway, so they have direct evidence being something that somebody sees. So like our eyewitnesses that we're talking about, eyewitness statements, those are considered direct evidence. And it's like videos or pictures, things like that. That's what's considered a direct piece of evidence. And people really, really want that. People really, really want, direct evidence. And circumstantial evidence is literally this. It's all evidence. None of it is not evidence. It's all can be presented as evidence. But circumstantial evidence is typically what people actually want, which is the DNA or in this case, the tool mark evidence, the forensic side of things. Circumstantial evidence is literally just what you can infer from one step to another, which is why in trials we always have they essentially both sides are telling a story. They're trying to tell the story of what's happening or what they believe happened, like their own theory of events. So typically prosecutors will give the jury like an analogy on how to understand what circumstantial evidence is and how it's still actually important. They'll do the whole, I go to bed at night and my driveway is dry. There's nothing there. But when I get up in the morning, there's 2 inches of snow. But it's not snowing. So I can infer that at some point during the night it snowed. Like that's kind of like a general one. Well, apparently Nick took it to like a whole nother level and was telling this whole thing about a snowman, where he was like, I go out and there's a puddle and 2 sticks, and then I go out and do I know what that is? And then it's like he backs out, and I don't know this exact. I don't know the way. Is it from To Kill a Mockingbird? Shit, I didn't even remember that. Yeah, most involve snow or rain or something along those lines. But it's any way for you to be able to see from point A to point B and understand that those 2 points have to match, even if you don't see the middle. And seeing the middle would be what would be considered the direct evidence. So it's all still relative. She does? Okay, thanks, Lacey.
And I will get to the last couple in just a minute. So, all right, jury selection. Now let's talk about what happened today with jury selection. I want to talk about what's in store for the jury and kind of how things work. I want to explain how it's a little bit different from what I'm used to. There's no right or wrong. I don't think it just was a little bit different. And then talk specifically about some of the things that happened during jury selection. So let's start with what's in store for the jury, because it's not an easy task to be a juror in this case. They live here in Fort Wayne, but they are going to have a trial down in Carroll County sections. It can't be based on race. It can't be based on gender. First panel, 6 of them were struck for whatever reason. We don't know what exactly. And 6 were not. And of those, none of them said that they had big problems with the sequester, that they couldn't do anything. But it was really sort of, everybody was just feeling their way. It was a lot more awkward. There wasn't a lot of conversation between the attorneys and those, not as much.
Hold on, I'll refresh it.
They were absolutely positively sure how they felt. Now, they weren't saying how they felt, although you can probably guess that it would be favorable to the prosecution and against the defense just because of what publicity is out there. That would be the most likely result. But they didn't say, and that was very intentional. The judge would say, without saying what your opinion is, do you have an opinion? And get them to go ahead and answer that. So just a comment. They did it differently, approached it differently. McClellan did all of the questioning for the prosecution. He's the elected prosecutor in Carroll County, and he was excellent, absolutely excellent, great rapport with the jury. It was just really well done. I talked to one of the local news reporters who had done an analysis of what the spending had been for WTHR, and he had actually looked at where all the spending went, and he told me that the prosecutors did hire a jury consultant. They'd spent about $4,000 on this jury consultant. This jury consultant must have been really, really good because it was really well done, and I thought that he had good connection with the jury. The defense.
So she thinks that Nick did a good job. We hear multiple sides of that coin today. So that's interesting. This is why we listen to multiple people to see, what their thought process is on, and what their observations are from being inside the courtroom.
Well, also, I just thought there was a special connection with the prosecution, with the exception of the way the defense did it was they broke it out among 3 different attorneys. So one of the things that you do during voir dire is you use that opportunity to connect to the jury that is about to hear you present and argue and cross-examine and examine all the witnesses. You connect with them through that. They are obviously going to have 3 different lawyers during the case. So they wanted each of them to connect to the jury. And I felt like the defense got stronger and stronger throughout the day. By the time we got to the 4th round, which was by Rosie, the attorney Rosie, it was really well done, just really well done, and super good connections that he made with the jurors. So let's talk about some of the things that were discussed and that were talked about. Oh my goodness, I have a lot of people to thank. Okay, I will. Let's see, where was I? I was on Crowned Bird. Okay, Shara, I was like, to you that I'm an attorney. Is it enough that I'm here? Do you maybe need to see my bar card? Do you need to contact the bar to ask them about it? What would you need? And, people gave a range of answers. His point, do you believe I'm an attorney? One had one was a single mom with a 1-year-old, I think. There was one who had a 3-year-old. Actually, that mom got seated. She had a 3-year-old and her husband was going to be going on vacation, not vacation, I think business trip during the course of the trials. And she wasn't sure what she was going to do, but she was still pitched. But she did say, well, she would try to work it out and she wasn't sure. So that was not clear enough. So she ended up on the jury. There were 2 really interesting questions I wanted to go over that the prosecution asked. One was the prosecution asked, do you believe I'm an attorney? And people would say, well, yes, I believe that. And he would say, what's your evidence? And he said, what would you need for me to prove to you that I'm an attorney? Is it enough that I'm here? Do you maybe need to see my bar card? Do you need to contact the bar to ask them about it? What would you need? And, people gave a range of answers. His point was that you might not need as much evidence as you might think. Circumstances might cause you to believe something. And he even explained that a couple of times. For example, the fact that he was speaking in the courtroom, that the judge hadn't made him sit down, that he was allowed to represent the state, that he was an elected prosecutor, and the judge had said so. Those things might make someone think that he was an attorney, even if they didn't have a documentation or proof of that. And there was also an analogy he used, and I'll do it to you sort of slowly so you can sense it like it was. So he said, okay, let's say there's snow on the ground. You leave for spring break. You come back and there's a puddle in your front yard. A puddle. What?
Snow on the ground.
What do you think happened? He said, all right, and whatever you think, what about now I tell you there are 2 sticks in the puddle. You have any ideas? And I said, okay, there are 2 sticks and 2 pieces of coal in the puddle. Now there are 2 sticks and 2 pieces of coal and a scarf in the puddle. And now there are 2 sticks, 2 pieces of coal, a scarf, and a top hat. And finally, 2 sticks, 2 pieces of coal, scarf, top hat, and a name badge that says Frosty on it. And
yeah, so she's not talking this fast. I have her sped up. So, because I just want to touch on some of the points. If you guys want to watch her entire live, I really want you guys to watch it on her channel. I just wanted to be able to gather some of the main pieces of information from the people inside the courtroom and put it in one spot, which is what I'm doing here. And, but to watch their entire notes and everything that they took today, please go watch it on their channel. The mods are dropping the links. Right now we're doing Lawyer Lee's. But she is sped up because I don't want to watch her entire thing. I want to be able to just hit on some of the points. If it's too fast for you, I apologize. But you can also slow it down the same way that I sped it up. So if you hit your settings, you can always go to your playback speed and it will drop it down under normal. You can go to a slower part if you want to listen to it here. If you want to listen to it at whatever speed you want and like a normal speed on her channel, please go watch it on her channel. I'm absolutely, I would love for everybody to be subbed to Lawyer Lee and Andrea Burkhart. They're 2 amazing attorneys that are sharing their insight with us. So please go subscribe to them. But if it is too fast for you, you can change it on your own settings or you can watch it normal on their channel. Do you want to build a snowman? It doesn't have to be a snowman.
And so what do you think happened? And so people were like, oh, well, the snowman that was in the front yard melted, and that's why there's a puddle there. And his point was that all of one of the things he wanted to do is find out how far did the person have to have their proof level before they just accepted it, because the proof that is available to the prosecution isn't as strong as some might want. One of the things he asked jurors about was whether they expected CSI level proof, because there's not that level of proof. There's not DNA, and there's not, frankly, there are not a lot of the pieces of evidence that he asked.
She's telling you right now, he's telling them they don't have those things. So when we talked about the evidence earlier, that's why I said I'm going to wait and let them tell you what was actually said, because Nick is telling the potential jurors what they don't have.
Jurors, what is it you would want to prove this? And they named many, many different things, most of which he didn't have. So he was trying to say, okay, this snowman is representative of the fact that somewhere along the way, you can make a determination without having every possible fact. You don't maybe have to have the name tag. Maybe by the time you get to, did I say the carrot? Dang it. I forgot the carrot because that was the easiest one. Sorry about that. That was the one that I got it on. Darn it. I'm not a good joke teller. All right. And not that it was a joke, but I'm just saying as a regular proposition, I am not. So his point was that somewhere along the way, and some people,
HCC, leave the snowman alone. Leave Frosty alone.
would take more evidence than others, require more evidence than others. You'd start to come to the belief that was probably a snowman. And that's why everything's lying there. But he wanted to make the point that these people might not get all the evidence they wanted, and they might have to make a determination before they reach that level. The defense.
You hear that? And I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. She's saying the prosecutor is telling the jury, we don't have this information. We don't have this evidence. So we need you to be able to make a decision based on what we do have, and we may not meet your threshold.
And let me switch over to my notes so I can take you through. Some of it I got typed up, some of it I didn't, because
I also want to make sure that it's very clear to anybody who is listening. That doesn't mean they don't have evidence. We just talked about the evidence that we do know that they have. What I'm trying to say is everybody who has run around for months trying to say that there's some other big bombshell evidence, he's telling you there isn't. That doesn't mean there won't be other pieces of circumstantial that he'll put in there, but he's telling the potential jurors there is no big bombshell evidence that we do not know about. You can get mad about it all you want to, but the prosecutor is the one saying it.
we went so pretty late today. All right, so I want to talk about let's see, that was McClellan and the jury consultant, but I told y'all about that. So a number of people had medical appointments, or family members who had important medical appointments. Typically, it looked to me like the judge was striking for cause anyone with a really good reason why it would be tough for them to be sequestered. And they would ask them, either the judge or more usually the prosecutor would ask them, is it at the level that you would be distracted during the trial? And if they said yes, then they would be struck. That's what it looked like to me. And if they said, well, I could probably figure it out. Would the fact that you aren't there to care for your child distract you? Well, no, I could probably figure that out. So if they said they could, they were kept in the pool. And if they said, no, I just absolutely couldn't do that, it would really distract me and prevent me from being a juror, then it looked like they were probably being struck, which made a lot of sense to me. All right. So, okay. The defense, when they started the questioning, asked a question that I felt like ended up backfiring. They asked if let's say you go to the police and cooperate. Is that some proof that you must not have been involved because you bothered to go to the police and cooperate? And the first person to answer that is like, well, that may be somebody trying to throw the police off the trail, which is exactly what the prosecution says about Richard Allen going to the police within a few days of the time the girls disappeared. And two others then kind of,
if you guys haven't picked up yet, she's talking about now what the defense is saying.
Followed suit. They did not ask that question again of another panel. I felt like that one really did kind of backfire. They were asked about, the jurors were, if you were told to disregard something and the judge said, don't pay attention to that, could you do that? Could you really do that? And surprisingly, some people said no. Even if the judge told me to disregard it, I could not. Oh, before I forget, let me just throw this in. One of the things they told two of the jurors, because they will know in advance that they're alternates apparently, and they said, you will sit with the jury, but you won't be allowed to talk or say anything. So you will hear the jury debating and discussing what exactly they're going to do, what they think, but you won't be allowed to participate in that. I can see where that keeps the jury kept up so that if somebody is off the jury, you can throw the alternate in really quickly. But they were asking the alternates, would you be able to do that if you were sitting there listening and you know for a fact they have some fact wrong or some point wrong? Would you be able to just sit there and say nothing? I thought my answer would be absolutely not. There is zero way I could do that. I have never heard of a juror being asked to do that. It seems like an awfully tough proposition to just sit there and take it while people say things that you believe are inaccurate. So, wow. I didn't know that's how they did it. Mostly I've seen where the jury has to start over again if one of the jurors has to be replaced with an alternate. So that was a little bit different. All right, let's see. One of the things that the defense really wanted to talk about, approach, and deal with is the confessions, right? And why would anybody confess to a crime they did not commit? So they asked the jury to give them some ideas. What are some reasons someone might confess to a crime they didn't commit? Now, not everybody was willing to do that. Some people said, well, I can't admit. Why would you confess to a crime you can't commit? But some of the reasons that came out, one, because you did do it, mental health. And that is one of the key reasons they say Richard Allen confessed. You want something to end and for it to be over. That is also one of the things that they believe caused and are planning to argue caused Richard Allen to confess. An older lady who had had depression said she takes meds for that. And maybe they just kept repeating until they break him down and he says he's guilty. And Rosie popped on that. It's like, so if you have an underlying condition of depression, would that make the impact of what they were doing to you even more? And she said, yes, it would. And the reason that's important is because Richard Allen did have, in fact, an underlying condition of depression.
But did they keep that juror? That would be the question.
It was a super interesting day. It really was. We got so much insight into where they're going and what they think are going to be the key arguments and the key things they're concerned about or plan to deal with. There was one comment from a juror.
J.O., that might be why I can understand when I watch everything. I only have her on 1.5. I'll tell you guys, I listen to almost everything on 2. There's very few people that I don't listen to on 2 if I'm on replay. So, but it might be because I'm jacked up on Dr. Pepper.
Well, look, because remember I told you the prosecutor was asking, well, what if would you have to have DNA or could you live without DNA? Would you have to have the murder weapon or could you live without that? And this guy said, well, if you don't have a weapon or DNA, you better have something. I thought that was pretty funny.
If you don't have the weapon and you don't have DNA, you better have something.
And indeed, that is what the defense is going to argue. There were several objections from the prosecution. I'm going to give you a couple in the course of what I'm going to talk about. There were none that I can remember anyway from the defense about the way the prosecutor was asking questions. But there was one point in which Baldwin, one of the other attorneys, got up, stood behind Richard Allen and put his hands on him and said, is it possible he is innocent? Is it possible this man is innocent? And there was an objection and he said, because this is serious business. And the prosecutor said, may we approach? And then Baldwin, for his next question, was away from Allen and not standing near him. So I presume it was sustained by Judge Gull. But it was what he was trying to do was humanize Richard Allen. And while we're there, let me go ahead and throw in, because Richard Allen's appearance was really different from how he has looked in the past. Let me share a screen with you. This is a picture of Richard Allen that was widely disseminated. It was when he was, I think, being brought into a hearing, and he was coming down the stairs, as you can see, surrounded by guards. He's wearing a bulletproof vest, or I guess that's what that is. Could be I don't know what it is exactly. And he's wearing prison garb. He stands out because of the color of the uniform that he's wearing, and you can just see sort of the whole appearance. That is not what Richard Allen looked like. He was clean shaven. All the other pictures I've seen of him, he had a beard, just about all of them anyway, and he was clean shaven. He was wearing a dress shirt, plaid dress shirt, no tie, not a suit, but a nice dress shirt. He's a small person. I understand he's 5'4", and so he's not very tall. And there was a comment from one of the jurors. Here it is. It was next. Thank goodness. Okay. She said, I thought I recognized him from TV, meaning I thought I would recognize him from TV, but I saw someone different. He was scary. Seeing him today, he looks different. And I asked around because what I had written down was he's a normal person with a question mark because I couldn't hear the words. But the reporter next to me felt like he said, today he looks different. That was, I could do a whole show on just that point. It is so fascinating to see. I really am frustrated.
So another big point around this is that we have seen Richard Allen going into court every single time. I could probably go back and find a clip every single time he's gone in or out of court in shackles, in his prison garb. We did not see Richard Allen being transported. He was transported apparently last night. Did anybody see that? I have not seen him being transported. I did not see him being transported to the courthouse. I did not see him in his normal attire at all. So if somebody knows of a clip of that, let me know, because I would be very curious to see if the mainstream media ever even had anything from him being in normal street clothes. Because talk about not having an equal playing ground. They're pushing the fact that he's guilty then. You know what I mean? That's a mainstream media pushing that, and that's a pretty common factor. Hold on. TNT says Bob is going to be your special guest tonight. Awesome. I was telling everybody earlier that you're going to do another live that goes through more of your notes.
By how crooked this is, I am really sorry about that. But I think that is so critical because this picture was allowed to be in the public. And it definitely, when you look at that, he looks like someone incredibly dangerous. He has to be flanked by numerous guards who have to hold on to him. And you think to yourself, he's really dangerous. Then when you see him in the courtroom and he's a very diminutive person, he seems very quiet. He looked frankly different. I honestly couldn't recognize him from the pictures. I wouldn't have picked him out. He just looked so different.
There's an underground passage to the courthouse, Michael Osbrook says. There's an underground passage to the courthouse. Huh. Okay. And because before, when the hearings were in Allen County, they would drive him up that morning. So maybe that's why then?
And I can't really say healthy, unhealthy. He just looked really, really different. And I understood what she was saying. It didn't look like the same person. I thought that was one of the most important comments of the day.
I only heard, Lana, I heard that they only talked about who they added to the witness list. Did they release the entire witness list? Because I did see that they talked about who they were adding that was not already on the witness list. Let me know how accurate that is.
And said that whatever their thinking was on how his appearance should be, they had gotten it right. And one of the questions I think it was Rosie asked him was, look, if I see someone in handcuffs on the side of the road, I'm driving down the road, someone's out of their car, and the police have them in handcuffs behind their back, I think, well, they must have done something. And I'm a defense lawyer, he said, and I still think that. And do you think that? Is that something that immediately pops to your mind? All right, I tried to cut this down. I took an entire notepad of notes from one day. It's going to be one notepad per day. All right. So one of the questions, and I think pretty sure this came from the prosecution, was, are there any other concerns you have where you just think you wouldn't be a good juror for this case? It's not that you aren't good jurors. You're all good jurors, but would you maybe not be a good juror for this case? And I thought that was a really interesting, really important question. And I don't think there was anyone who answered that as, yes, I would not be good. There was an objection to one of the statements made during the voir dire by the defense was, Mr. McClellan has told you he's not going to be able to give you a motive. And then there was an objection that appeared to be sustained because they switched questions right after that.
Nothing, Ten. We've seen nothing from today on Richard Allen. Just what people who were in the room say he was wearing like a pinkish purple, possibly with a stripe. They may be able to watch TV if it's controlled. So I know sometimes that when jurors have been sequestered, they essentially like take off all the news channels. Lavender shirt and khaki pants. I want to be T in my next life, Lauren. You're silly.
Nearly finished with the notes I wanted to throw your way. Okay, I remember the snowman analogy. I felt like, and I told you that the defense got stronger and stronger throughout the day. Here's a perfect example of that. They went through, I think they were by this time at the 4th round of 12 jurors. So by now the others are gone. There aren't as many seeing it. So this is unfortunate for them. But
we have all the local male YouTubers. I remember that. Everybody was like, say down the hill. And then everybody would do it like Ron Logan did. Down the hill, down the hill. Yeah, the fence is in black so they can take the jurors in because they do not want the media catching them outside. Which I don't want the media catching them at all either. Hey, Cat in the chat. Can't stay, but everyone show T some love and hit that like button.
Rosie said, well, you remember this snowman thing. Look, isn't it way, and there was an objection on part of this, but he got enough of it out and moved back into it a different way. He was like, well, isn't this discussion about Richard Allen and whether or not he committed murder, isn't that way more important than whether or not the snowman melted? Or I think he was really talking about whether or not this man is a lawyer or not. I mean, maybe the reason you aren't demanding a high level of proof, he was saying, about whether this guy is a lawyer, you aren't demanding a high level of proof because who really cares? I mean, he's allowed to be here. He's arguing the case and you just move on with it. Whereas if this is your job and you have to be the person to decide whether this guy is guilty of murder, then you better pay close attention to this. And it was interesting, the responses he got. He didn't say that much. They said it for him. They said, yeah, I see what, I think we should think very carefully about the Richard Allen decision. It's whether he's an attorney or not is not my decision, but beyond a reasonable doubt is my decision. And we have to have facts. The snowman doesn't really matter.
A potential juror said that. Like, that gives some hope right there. Like, it's not up to me. It's not my decision to whether this guy is actually an attorney, but it is my decision to make sure that if this is done beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a pretty smart potential juror right there. Hey, Jennifer.
But this does, and this is way more important a decision than the job that the attorney has. So I thought that was handled well, but it took all day for them to get to that. Only one person said that due to factors in her past, this case might be too traumatic for her and would bring up memories, but one person did say that and was not included. All right, so I will say thanks to everybody, but I also want to tell you where we stand, because we have at this point 12 jurors, 2 alternates. Of that group, there are 8 women and 6 men. Now, if you look at the actual current jury, there are 7 women and 5 men. And that's what I have written down. Hopefully I got that correct. So I will take some questions now.
Okay, so I'm gonna switch over to Andrea Burkhart. Like I said, if you guys want to watch her entire live, I'm gonna make sure that both of these are linked in the description, and the mods have been dropping the links for both channels. So make sure if you want to watch the entirety and see everything that they had to say, please go to their channels, watch their entire stream. It's definitely worth it. I just want to touch on some of the things that Andrea Burkhart, who is also an attorney, who is also in the courtroom, said. Her observations were some are the same, and she elaborates on some things that Lawyer Lee didn't, and Lawyer Lee elaborated on some things that Andrea Burkhart didn't. So it's like kind of important to like bring them all together. But if you want the entirety of it, and like I said, Lana did do one on truth and transparency. As she was leaving the courthouse, she has another one planned for tonight. So as soon as if she's still in chat, she can tell us what time, or I'll double check it so that we can go over there. She said Bob Mata might be joining her. There's another attorney that you guys know I absolutely love. Murder Sheet was also in there, and then Barbara McDonald was in there, and Barbara McDonald was posting all of her stuff on Twitter. So make sure you guys follow Barbara McDonald on Twitter. So here we go. Let's back this up.
Really see a lot of those things happening. The folks from the murder.
I don't know. Her lighting is like fucking amazing. I'm just going to put that out there. Okay. Yes. Live 10:30 Eastern. Okay. 7:30 my time. And she has Hector, the projector. What did we name her if she was a girl? I don't even remember what we named her. So all your notes will be on the screen. I know, but she just looks so damn pretty, Dan.
Sheet were there. It was a little bit surprising that there were a fair number of people that did not report any familiarity with the case, not seeing anything about it in the media, not knowing about it. Somebody was telling me in the line outside that might have been one of the reasons why they picked Fort Wayne in the first place, because in Allen County, apparently the media just didn't.
So she says that there was actually a lot of the potential jurors that didn't have any idea, had not heard about the case at all. So a lot of people were worried about that, because obviously this is 7.5 years running that it's been covered, and there was people from the potential jury pool that had never heard of the case. And then she tells us like there was other people who had heard of the case but weren't like overly involved in it, like overly like following it, and then there was some that actually knew and already had determined like this is I already have an opinion and I will not change my mind.
Really cover the story very extensively. It was one of the least covered areas in the state. So there were quite a few people that had not heard of the case. On the other hand, there certainly were plenty who had, and of the ones that had, I'd say it was split probably about 50-50 between folks who said, I have an opinion, it's a firm opinion, and I'm not going to change it, and people who either said, I don't have an opinion yet, or I do have an opinion, but I'm still open, I'd be willing to change my mind. Of course, following from Koberger, how much weight can we really put on that? I don't know. It was really interesting, I will say, watching this jury selection after having followed that whole process in the Koberger case with the change of venue and the jury questionnaire, the survey that had been done, and all the testimony we got about the psychology.
Amy, that's so sweet. Thank you. I'm trying to bring everybody into like getting all of their info into one location. The best I can.
Bias and stuff like that, because I could really see a lot of those things happening in this court, the way that the process was kind of cementing people in certain positions, not necessarily inviting them to maybe say what they really think, kind of putting words in their mouth a little bit. But all in all, I would say so far I'm pretty positive on the panel as well as the jurors that have been selected. So that's where we're at, guys. They're going to have a.
So she has a good feeling about the jurors that have been selected so far, that they will be able to actually have, the mindset of innocent until proven guilty, and will listen to the facts that are presented from both sides before making the decision. So her as an attorney walking out of there, she said, so far right now, like I have a good feeling about all of this, like about all the people that they have chosen. So, hey, Liberty's Truth and Justice.
a jury tomorrow. At the close of the hearing, Judge Gohl said that what they expect to do tomorrow is
We
to
definitely
finish
do.
selecting the jury, and then they will take up the rest of the motions that are still outstanding. There are some motions in limine still hanging out there. I know the one about the defense's ballistics expert is still out there. Questions about who's going to be able to sit at counsel table or behind counsel table and assist. The state wants to have two.
Perfect. So she actually answers the question for us. She said that so they're going to finish the jury selection, and then they are going to go through the rest of the motions that we were talking about earlier in the live that are still pending and what needs to be done before trial. So the jury view, all of that stuff.
Representatives, two law enforcement representatives that are not subject to the witness exclusion order. The defense is objecting to that. They say the rule says you get one, you should only get one. There's some issues as well
Thank
that the
you,
defense
Frank.
raised about the fact that these two officers had both kind of collectively been involved in investigating the Department of Corrections, the conditions of Mr. Allen's confinement. And so it was particularly important that their independent testimony not be untainted by the others, because they could have, different versions or different perspectives on what it was that they saw. So that just right at the front, guys. Not gonna hold it back. That's really your bottom line. We're really, really close to getting a jury. So I want to go ahead and just give you a lot more of the details of what happened today, kind of fill in some of the blanks. Before I do that, though, I do have some shout outs that I want to give. Some folks that have been
All right,
enormously
let me
helpful
skip
for
through this
me
part.
in terms of being
She
kept on
does,
the walls. Coffee over here
does give all
has
the
a wrench as well.
a
So
lot of
yes,
kudos
Jeff is not.
to Sleuthy and All Eyes and everybody who's put together, spreadsheets, Yellow Jacket, spreadsheets on the court documents to make them more organized and easier to find. But we know all of them are amazing, so let's skip ahead.
So I got my first look at Mr. Allen. I had not seen him before. I was quite surprised at how small he is. I just from photos that I'd seen of him back mostly around the time of his initial arrest, I had assumed he's probably somewhere in the 5'10" to 6 foot, stage, and probably a little bit of a beefy man. He has certainly lost weight, and I had expected that, and I knew that. But he's short. He's small, which I did not realize. Hadn't really had that perspective. One of the things that was interesting is at one point, one of the panelists had made a comment that she knew about the case. She'd watched the media, had an opinion about Mr. Allen from watching that, but then seeing him in the courtroom, her opinion has now changed. And essentially, I think what she was getting at was that he seemed very scary and intimidating through the
Wait,
media.
hold on a second. You guys, is Thomas's birthday today? Thomas, is it seriously your birthday and I missed it? Happy birthday, Thomas. This is true. He's super tiny. If Gohl excludes Tobin's testimony, she has completely kneecapped the defense even more than she already has. The man is one of the country's most well-respected metallurgy. I hate that fucking word. Ballistics experts. Oh, tomorrow. Happy early birthday.
Actually seeing him in person, she didn't get that impression. I really didn't get that impression at all either. He seemed somewhat nervous, although he did calm down as the day went on. But at least initially, wide-eyed and seemed a little bit tense. Seemed to need a little bit of reassurance from the team. He's clean shaven, shaved head. He was wearing a collared shirt that was kind of looked like white with maybe a pink stripe or check or something like that. Give it a little bit of a pinkish hue to it. He was not wearing a jacket or a tie. Mostly spoke with Mr. Baldwin. Can't say he didn't talk to anybody else on the team, but it was primarily Mr. Baldwin who talked to him, and they do seem to have a good relationship. Mr. Baldwin would put his hand on Mr. Allen's shoulder from time to time when they were speaking. Mr. Baldwin is, by contrast, quite a large man, well over 6 feet tall, probably somewhere 6'2" to 6'4". Not fat, but he's got a presence. So quite a contrast between them. I can imagine if I was in a courtroom feeling nervous, feeling intimidated, feeling unsafe, having this sort of large hulking man hovering over me, comforting me, and speaking to me, that would make me feel much more safe in the process. Rick was very attentive to his attorneys. He did seem to interact with them. There weren't obvious issues.
We've heard a lot that Baldwin and Richard Allen seem to be closer. I don't know if that's the right word, but we have heard that a lot throughout different hearings, that Richard Allen does talk more with Baldwin than he does with Rosie.
Obviously, there's been reports of mental health concerns and just other things like that. But there was nothing that jumped out as alarming. He didn't seem like disturbed or anything like that. Seemed to be functional and cooperative, listening attentively, nodding along, participating in the process. Like they would, between rounds, when they would discuss, who's getting stricken and things like that, they would do that as a group on the defense side, and he would participate in that. Also, my first time seeing Mr. McClelland, and I got to tell you, I realize this is a very shallow first impression, but the dude has Coke dealer hair. Okay, it's hard for me to get past.
I fucking love Andrea Burgard. Oh my God. I don't know how I missed that when I was watching her live earlier. She said he has Coke dealer hair. Oh, shit. Oh my God, that is fucking hilarious. Oh shit.
When I say Coke dealer hair, what I mean is it's long and slicked, like slicked back. Not just slicked back. Like Mr. Rossi also wears his hair slicked back, but his is short and faded. So it doesn't the long but slicked back look, Coke dealer look. But anyway, that aside, he was
No wonder he's talking about snowmen.
quite effective at his voir dire. In a little bit, I'll go through some of the details of what they did and kind of also give you my thoughts about like how do they rank, skill wise, how did they do? So, as was previously announced, no electronics in the courthouse, no drinks, no food, nothing like that. So it's a lot of us in the third floor on the courtroom. There's bathrooms only down on the first floor. There's a drinking fountain only down on the first floor. And we got 1 10-minute break today, guys. 1 10-minute break, no lunch. No lunch. We went in session from 9 o'clock to just about 5 o'clock.
I can't believe
And yeah, that was quite a long day. I got a little thirsty. I might be sucking on my little water bottle here. Trying to get all rehydrated, but no phones, nothing like that, even allowed in the courthouse at all. So on the one hand, that does make screening us in pretty easy, pretty straightforward. They got us in very quickly.
I don't understand. They bought all like new metal detectors and everything for the courthouse. Or I guess that's not for this one. That's for Carroll County.
So we started off with Judge Gull explaining what the process was going to look like, what was going on, that the first panel was consisting of 52 jurors. They go in and watch an introductory video and then come up to the courtroom. The first 12 fill in the box. Everybody else sits out in the
So they watch an introductory video. She's the only one I've heard talk about that. They watch this introductory video before they come up to the courtroom
audience. So the voir dire would take place basically 12 at a time, but everybody else was still there, so they could hear the questions and things like that. Just didn't really participate or have an opportunity to speak up until it was their turn to end up in the box. So then each side got 30 minutes of questioning. The judge has specific questions that she asked the entire panel up at the very beginning, and those mainly went to bias. Those went to things like, have you seen the media? Do you have family in law enforcement? These kinds of basic qualifying types of questions. And then basically every time a new 12 would come into the box, she would just ask them, did you answer affirmatively to any of my initial questions? And then people would say, yes, I seen the media about it. Yes, my brother-in-law is a police officer, things like that. So after her questions, then the attorneys got 30 minutes per side, and they did use that pretty consistently. They used most of their time. They did all of their challenges and strikes up at the bench. And so everything for cause challenges, hardship challenges, medical situations, all of that stuff, it happened up at the bench. We got to see it happen, but we didn't get to hear it and know what was going on in terms of how challenges are being argued, how they are being decided. So it seemed to me like Judge Gull was not really. I don't want to say she was stingy about hardship challenges, because she wasn't, but she wasn't real over generous with them either. Like, it's clear that for a 6-week trial, 5-week trial, whatever it's going to end up being, November 15th, with the jury being sequestered over there in Delphi, this is a big deal. This is going to make people's lives a little bit more difficult. So a lot of routine kinds of concerns that didn't really get a lot of sympathy. Things like, yes, it's going to be hard for you to get coverage at work. It's going to be hard for you to get childcare. It was difficult, it seemed to me, to get an excuse for those specific reasons. Like, they would have to be quite firm. I got a medical appointment that can't be rescheduled. I don't have any backup for childcare because nobody lives here, family or anything like that would be able to fill in. So that's, I think, part of why those initial 52, so many, it ended up ultimately making it onto the jury. We got many openings. This was a process that the defense had requested, and that.
So we've heard a little bit about this, but I want you guys to be able to hear her version of what she heard during these little mini openings from both sides. So some of it's kind of repetitive, but she does catch things that the others didn't, and vice versa.
She granted to basically what it says. They give the jury a brief introduction of what the case is about. So Judge Gohl herself reads the instruction, reads the information, the charging document, lays out the charges and the elements of the charges that the jury is going to have to find. But then it went to the attorneys to be able to give a little bit of a fuller picture of what the facts are going to look like in the case. So that gave us a little bit of a preview. So with finding my place in my notes here. So McClelland's mini statement was that the case is about bridge guy, a bullet, and the brutal murder of 3 girls.
That's like the headline. Like everybody's capturing this. The bridge guy, the bullet, and the brutal murder. She says 3. We all know. I think she means 2. So it's just either she didn't read her own handwriting correctly or she just got ahead of herself. No big deal. I misspoke. We all know that she means 2.
That seems to me to confirm that this case is kind of as weak as I had thought. The bullet is really the centerpiece, and they're bolstering the bullet with the statements that Mr. Allen ultimately made implicating himself.
Interesting, Andrea Burkhart. I thought the same thing.
So Mr. McClelland described the case that these girls lived in Delphi. They were off school on February the 13th of 2017. It was an unseasonably warm day. So they decided to go out to the Monon High Bridge Trail, which crosses about 60 feet over Deer Creek. It is high. It is a high bridge. You can't, they have it blocked off now so that, I mean, you can hop the little rail fence that they have if you wanted to, but I sure is not going to. God, this place is like scary enough, even without having to kind of navigate something like that. But seeing it, you know, as a lawyer, it's one of these things that just kind of shocks me that people were ever allowed out there on the first place. I mean, it's a railroad bridge. Like you have the ties and, you know, 6 inches between each one. And that's what people are walking on, you know, all the way across, like 60 feet over the water. There's no rail, nothing. Like, it's, yeah, if you're not into heights.
I would say, Amanda, the most interesting thing that I have learned about today, there's probably 2. The most interesting thing is that they already essentially have a jury. they've booked at least 13 of the 16, potentially 14, depending on her childcare and what the attorneys decide to do about her quote unquote hardship. But that would be the one of the interesting things. The other interesting thing to me is Nick's wording on what this case is about is bridge guy, a bullet, and the brutal murder of 2 girls. Like that's what he's saying his case is about.
I'm really not into heights. I was not going to look forward to walking across that thing. So he points out, yeah, kids like to cross it. It's kind of a test of their bravery, or maybe it's just fun or something like that. And so Abby and Libby decided to do it that day, but they were not alone. They were followed by Bridge Guy. Bridge Guy used a gun to kidnap them. He forced them down the hill. According to Mr. McClelland, his intent was to have his way with them, but he was interrupted. So he forced them to cross the river, remove their clothes, and then he cut their throats. According to Mr. McClelland, he then threw the clothes in the creek, went back to his car, but he left behind a clue, this bullet.
I'm so curious on why they think that the perpetrator threw the clothes in the creek versus that the clothes were dropped in the creek on the way over. I wonder, I'm so curious. Like that has been such a statement that they make. And I know it's not imperative to the crime, but like some of the things that they just lay down, like saying this is absolutely what they believe happened. I'm like, why is that the only option? Like what evidence do you have showing us that? And that's just a little minute part of it.
The bullet was right between the bodies, and the markings show it was cycled through his gun. And from Mr. McClelland, we heard that we will learn from Mr. Allen's own words that he was there at the time. And we'll hear on the video, according to Mr. McClelland, that Mr. Allen is Bridge Guy. And of course, we'll hear from Mr. Allen that he told his wife, his mother, his therapist, his corrections officers, fellow inmates, that he brutally murdered them, and that he will say why and how, and he will repeat it over and over again.
See, so right here, why and how. But it must have been on Lana's stream then, because I'm almost positive, and we can look at hers too. I'm almost positive that there was a comment back about like what does the juror need, or what do the potential jurors need, and one of them was talking about motive, and his response was that's not his burden. Like he doesn't have the burden to do that. So I'm wondering how that was actually said, because she's saying here, she said why and how to, which is what Scarlett said at the beginning of this live. So Scarlett, if you're here, then, oh yeah, there you are. So she's saying that he said why and how also.
Statement that we got from Mr. McClellan.
Let me back this
Mr.
up.
Allen, the bodies and the markings show it was cycled through his gun. And from Mr. McClelland, we heard that we will learn from Mr. Allen's own words that he was there at the time. And we'll hear on the video, according to Mr. McClelland, that Mr. Allen is bridge guy.
Ah, okay. Yeah, based on the confessions, that's what, okay. So he's saying to the jury that Richard Allen is going to say why and how. That the jury is going to hear it from Richard Allen. So it makes probably both statements true then, that when they said they needed motive in order for their, them to reach their beyond a reasonable doubt, and he said he didn't have the burden of that, but also him saying that they're going to hear why and how from Richard Allen's quote unquote confession/admissions. Okay, makes sense now.
And of course, we'll hear from Mr. Allen that he told his wife, his mother, his therapist, his corrections officers, fellow inmates, that he brutally murdered them, and that he will say why and how, and he will repeat it over and over again. So that was the mini statement that we got from Mr. McClellan. Mr. Baldwin gave the mini opening statement for the defense. And Mr. Baldwin started by saying, Mr. Allen confessed to taking the gun and shooting the girls in the back, but the girls weren't shot. And so he pointed out repeatedly that Mr. Allen admitted facts that were not true. That was really the focus of his opening. He said that Mr. Allen confessed to raping the girls. I'm probably not supposed to say that on YouTube, but oh well. And burying them in a shallow grave. But neither of those things had happened as well. There was no evidence supporting them. So ultimately, the problem here is that Mr. Allen confessed to a crime he didn't commit and relied on facts that were not true. He argues that tons of admissions and confessions are not true, and the context is what was going to be important. Mr. Allen had languished and deteriorated in solitary confinement in Westville Correctional Facility, a prison where the worst of the worst are held. The day before this happened, he was at home with his wife of 30 years and his dog when he was arrested for a crime he didn't commit. And then 15 days before an election, the sheriff sent him to the worst prison in the state and in the worst part of that prison, the solitary confinement. Mr. Baldwin told us we were going to see video of his life in there. This took me back to James, can't remember, Joker guy in the theater. What was his name? Somebody in the chat will remember. Anyway, he had pursued an insanity defense, and some of that was based on James Holmes. Thank you, K. Elf. Thank you, James Holmes. The defense had raised that in part based on video surveillance of his setting. Very similar situation. He was held in solitary confinement for an extended length of time, and basically, went nuts. And you can see it. You can see what he's doing in the cell. He's banging his head against the wall. Hiding under his covers for 20 hours a day. I mean, just a lot of stuff like that. So I'm expecting this video is not going to be real pleasant. According to Mr. Baldwin, psychologists will tell us that these are the ingredients for a false confession, which is consistent with everything that I know about that situation as well. He talked about soft evidence versus hard evidence and pointed specifically to the bullet. He said that Melissa Oberg is the analyst who has done over 1,100 comparisons. And according to her, she has never been wrong, but she has found fault with others that she has supervised. They've been wrong, but she has not. So Mr. Baldwin was apparently pitching this as kind of soft science, something that's subjective and not necessarily falsifiable or verifiable. He points instead for his example of hard data to the phone. He says there is hard data in the phone.
So he's saying that Oberg says she's never been wrong. Is that what you guys gathered from that? So Melissa Oberger said she's never been wrong, but she has corrected people that she supervised, but she's never actually been wrong. Is that what you guys just picked up on that? I'm going to rewind it a little bit.
I'm expecting this video is not going to be real pleasant. According to Mr. Baldwin, psychologists will tell us that these are the ingredients for a false confession, which is consistent with everything that I know about that situation as well. He talked about soft evidence versus hard evidence and pointed specifically to the bullet. He said that Melissa Oberg is the analyst who has done over 1,100 comparisons. And according to her, she has never been wrong, but she has found fault with others that she has supervised. They've been wrong, but she has not. So Mr. Baldwin was apparently pitching this as kind of soft science, something that's subjective and not necessarily falsifiable or verifiable. He points instead for his example of hard
Soft
data
lines.
to the phone. He says there is hard data in the phone. Where were the girls? What were they doing? The state police, again, just flashes to
Hard data in the phone too. I mean, they're gonna be bringing up the fact that, you know, all these text messages and whatnot start coming through at one time, and then we know that they bring up the knowledge C, which they said they're going to hold off till trial to talk about. So that's interesting. But Melissa Oberg says she's never been wrong. I don't know if is that just the defense saying that, or is she actually saying she's never been wrong? That would be kind of crazy.
to these other cases. There's echoes of Koberger in this. The state police were ill-equipped to understand the phone data, and there was infighting between the FBI and the local police. The
Yes,
local
we
police
know that.
apparently didn't like the FBI's
We
interpretation
know
of the
that.
phone data, and so they just cut them out, just dismissed them. Mr. Baldwin concluded by telling us
They
that
didn't like that the state police did not like the FBI's interpretation of the phone data, so they cut them out. Oh, Sleuthy, that's true. She probably did say it in her deposition.
Mr. Allen is innocent, and the evidence is going to show that. So, all in all, pretty strong counterpoints, I think, on these two opening statements. The weaker answer from Mr. Allen so far, in my view, is still on the firearm, is still on the bullet. He did make the kind of cursory criticism of Ms. Oberg, but really didn't get into the specifics of why this is soft science, quite frankly, if it is science at all, which in my mind is very much in question. That stuff gets real complicated, though. He's going to rely on an expert to explain that, but it's just going to the lack of validation of the types of claims that they're trying to make. Certainly in this particular case, to be able to say that the markings on this bullet allow me to exclude every other firearm in the world as being the source of those markings and identify Mr. Allen's gun as being the only gun in the world that could have produced them. There simply is not a valid scientific foundation to be able to make that type of claim. Yet the state is going to try to make it here. So the panel, like I said, was brought in as a whole. It was
12
not
jurors
racially
are watching. They
diverse.
better not
Not
be.
at all. There were a few black people, but it's mostly white. The ages were very mixed. Really all.
Somebody asked this question earlier. They were talking about, do we know like how old or what race, or we really only have a solid mix of what we know for the genders, but she does tell us that there is a mix of a little bit of everything. The age is kind of all over the place, and that there are more white than black.
All over the place. I was kind of expecting it to skew older, just because most of the time jury summonses do. Part of it, just the pool that they're drawing from, voter registrations, driver's licenses. Okay, maybe there's a good age range with driver's licenses, but voter registration is typically going to skew a little bit older. But then there's also just who's showing up. You know, not everybody who gets a summons is going to show up. One of the ladies from the media outside beforehand was saying that Indiana doesn't pursue contempt for not showing up to a jury summons because they don't. Her explanation was because they don't send it certified mail, so they can't prove you actually got it. I don't think most places send it certified mail, and that doesn't preclude them from going forward with contempt. But be that as it may, even if it's only cultural, apparently they don't necessarily do that. So anyway, I would just generally expect people who are a little bit older to be more inclined to be compliant with it, to show up. People who are younger are going to be the ones that have a harder time getting off work, harder time finding childcare, you know, to allow them to be able to come in. But that really, it didn't seem to happen. There really was a very wide mix of ages. So Judge Gull gave the preliminary instructions in the case. She explained it's going to conclude by November 15th, possibly sooner, according to the lawyers. We're going to start at 9 a.m. In Carroll County and run every day to maybe 5 or 6 p.m., just depending. So they are going to be long days. She explained that they're going to be sequestered, that the bailiff would help them with instructions about how transportation is going to work. They're all going to be bused over to Delphi. Nobody's going to drive themselves. Assistance with what to pack and so forth. Oh, this was quite interesting. They had to read off their witness list. Each side read off their witness list because the jury needed to be, you know.
There we go. So Lana was talking about that they did say their witness list. And so what Barbara had posted on Twitter was just who they added to it. So let's see what she says here.
Asked if they know any of those people. So I have to say, number one, the acoustics in this room were terrible. They were so bad. It's this wide open, echoey
Everybody
room.
says
And
that.
so any little sound, somebody flipping the page, on their notebook, somebody coughing, somebody whispering, it would just overwhelm all of the other sound in the room, made it a little bit difficult to hear. But then also in this particular case, when they were reading the witness list, they both Mr. McClelland and Mr. Rossi, who read it for the defense, they read it very quickly. So I can't promise these numbers are 100%. They're just in the ballpark. My best count of how many witnesses each of them named, approximately 53 witnesses named by the state, approximately 136 witnesses named
Jeez.
by the defense. Now, there is some overlap between them. Some of them are the same people, but nevertheless, more than 2 to 1, almost 3 to 1 witnesses from the defense relative to the state.
That's because the state had originally come out with that they had like 180 or something huge on their list. And then at one of the hearings, Nick was telling Judge Gold that they had narrowed it down. It was the one where they were talking about whether there was enough time. And the defense was arguing that with 150, 180 witnesses on the state's witness list, that there was not going to be enough time for the defense to have their case in chief. And Nick said, well, we've narrowed it down to about 50. And the defense was like, yeah, but you haven't told us who those 50 are. So we still have to prepare for your 180 or whatever to be able to say, be able to question them. So did anybody actually get the names of all the witnesses or a lot of the witnesses?
That was pretty astonishing. That's unusual, not the normal state of affairs at all. I don't know if all of these people are ultimately going to be admissible. They did include some names that I recognize, like, for example, Todd Click. Todd Click is the former law enforcement officer who was involved in kind of developing the Odinism theory that law enforcement originally investigated in the case. But the Odinism theory has been excluded by Judge Gull. So if Mr. Click is not going to talk about Odinism, are they going to call him? I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be anything else there. But it is possible that some of these witnesses are just named to kind of preserve the defense's argument that they wanted to call these people, intended to call these people. And so if Judge Gull's ruling ultimately precludes them from doing that, they have made their record that they were attempting to do that. So for appeal purposes, they can argue, here's what this witness would have testified, here's why that witness should have been allowed, and so forth.
Yeah, and it could have to do with their offer of proof as well.
We have a live court reporter as well as an audio recording, according to Judge Gull. This matters because I was looking at the Indiana trial rules for how it works in terms of public record. The audio is public record, guys. It's like explicitly there in the statute. It is a court record. It goes, the disc or whatever they recorded onto goes into the possession of the clerk to be maintained as a public record. That means we should be able to get copies of it. And all these hearings have happened before, by the way. That 3-day hearing that happened back in August, that I would still like to know a lot more of the specifics about what happened there. That recording, it should be public record. So yeah, why we don't have it, I would sure love to know. It seems like just a little bit more of the shenanigans with a lack of transparency. I had seen that some media outlets had requested to view the exhibits from that hearing. Similarly, the exhibits, these are court records, they are public. It's not even really a gray area is the thing. Like this is pretty black and white public record. Nevertheless, Judge Gull had advised them she's not going to let them view the exhibits until after the trial. No findings, no order, no nothing, no basis for it that's been articulated. Just that's the way that she wants it done.
Yeah, no basis for it is kind of the biggest part of this entire trial for her. She just says this is how it is and doesn't give any basis for it.
And it seems pretty contrary to the rules of public disclosure. So this, if you've been following the case, this has been an ongoing issue with things. I mean, from day one, the probable cause affidavit is filed under seal. This man is arrested and taken into court and, confined, held in solitary in a prison before he's got lawyers appointed to him. And we're not even allowed to know why until like a month later when it finally got unsealed. Issues with documents being left off of the formal court record, the docket, so that nobody even knows that they exist. Yeah, lots and lots of issues with public access. So just so we know, there is an audio. It is supposed to be a public record, meaning that people should be able to get it. If anyone wants to try, I mean, feel free to try. The court reporter being there means that they will also be preparing a transcript, but the court reporter doesn't.
I don't typically get responses. I mean, sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll get a response on that I just can't have it, but I don't get a response on why I can't have certain things. And that's typically when Tammy gets involved. Tammy in chat, she's like, "Give me the email. I'll take care of this right now." Right. Most of those 100+ defense has no intention of calling. Agreed.
Doesn't prepare a transcript for filing until one of the parties orders one from her. So we may get transcripts as part of public record as well. But again, just given the issues that we've had with that in this case, how easily accessible that will be remains to.
I was told that I could order the transcripts of the trial after the trial was complete.
Be seen. But it does give me some hope that at least at some point, even if for now in kind of the real time, you're having to rely on me and other people who have been present in the courtroom to kind of tell you about it, that at some point in the future, if not sooner, that original source material itself will be available. So that's good, I guess. She gave an instruction defining reasonable doubt. The defense objected to her instruction because they said that the full instruction it's more expansive, and it is. The defense team read the full jury instruction on reasonable doubt during jury selection a couple of times to the different panels. But Mr. Razi had objected to Judge Gold's instruction, saying that basically it's not. The instruction language is much stricter. So Judge Gold's definition was that beyond a reasonable doubt, you're convinced beyond a reasonable doubt when you are firmly convinced of the defendant's guilt. That was the standard that she gave. And that if you find there is a real possibility that he's not guilty, then you must vote not guilty.
Do you guys remember what was it? I think it was an article where they're talking to Nick, and Nick is talking about what the percentage is, like what he believes the threshold for reasonable doubt is, and it was like 60-70%. Do you guys remember? It was like I think he said it was 70. I wonder if I still have that up. I wonder if I still have that somewhere. Do you guys remember that? And he was like the threshold for reasonable doubt is like super low, and then everybody else involved in the survey part was like, no, it's like 80-90%. You have to be above 80-90% to say that it's reasonable doubt, or beyond reasonable doubt. He said it was super low. It was like 70, I think. I'd have to go back and find it. I guess you could be right, Peggy. Don't quote me on it, but his was low, and the average was like 80-90. It was the other murder case he did. Was that what it was from, Peggy? Yeah, I remember reviewing it, but now I don't know. We'll have to find that again.
These, are not, from a defense standpoint, these are not particularly great standards. So I understand why the defense then, supplemented that with the entire instruction, because the entire instruction does include a lot more language about how, you must
hell, I don't know. I've heard that, but I haven't seen all the documentation yet. But I did hear that today, that Judge Gold's nephew was arrested for kidnapping. I don't know the validity of it or the source of it. Somebody messaged me about it today. So I haven't done any research on that whatsoever.
Strict standard, and you don't have to be convinced beyond all doubt, but you must be must be convinced more than just probably the defendant did it. So fleshing out a little bit more than just firmly convinced. But it's very typical for the beyond a reasonable doubt standard to be a big part of the subject in voir dire. The attorneys want to know how the jurors interpret that. What does that mean to them? How can they envision themselves applying it? So that was very much the case here on both sides. No jurors' names were used in open court, just numbers. They are very important. You don't get to do action, the ability to gain the trust of the jury, to be able to kind of capture before you make your decision about the case. But the problem, though, you can.
She talks a lot about reasonable doubt here.
A lot of focus on kind of prepping the jurors for the weakness of the case, because we know they're not going to have that evidence. They don't have DNA tying Mr. Allen to the scene. They don't appear to have location data and stuff like that. So they're going to be making their case, like I said, primarily built on this bullet, and then they're going to bolster the bullet with those statements that he made. So in some respects, I did think there was a possibility that this line of questioning was maybe counterintuitive, because he was inviting jurors to answer things like what type of evidence would you expect in a murder case? And so people are throwing things out: fingerprints, DNA, alibi, motive, the weapon, all stuff. Yeah, I don't think he has. So it's just, you probably maybe didn't want to get them thinking about all of that stuff they want to see before you decline to give it to them. Maybe there would have been a better way to handle that. He, of course, focused on the beyond a reasonable doubt standard. What does that mean to you? He had an example that he would use because he wanted to explore this idea of being firmly convinced, and what does that take? So he had a couple examples that he used. The first one was him claiming, I'm a lawyer. Are you
Oh,
firmly
this one,
convinced of
this
that?
one again.
And then they would
She
go
talks about
through
the
and
response.
talk about why. Well, the judge is allowing you to be here. You ran for prosecuting attorney and you have to have a law license. You're here practicing law in front of us. You've told us you're a lawyer. And so that was enough to firmly convince most of the jurors that he was a lawyer. Mr. Baldwin, he demolished that. It was pretty genius. So it took him to the second round because that's when it was Mr. Baldwin's turn. But Mr. Baldwin had a story from his county about a gentleman who was practicing law who didn't have a license. He had apparently he had gone to law school and he was working for a large name firm, but he didn't pass the bar. So it came out he wasn't in fact a lawyer. And so after Mr. Baldwin had told that story, then more people were kind of willing to be more skeptical. I'm not so firmly convinced that you're a lawyer just because you're here looking like one.
Did anybody ever watch the show Suits? It's like literally the story of Suits.
Extremely effective undermining of that example, and it made it a little bit more challenging for Mr. McClelland to keep doing it. His other example was you've left on spring break, and
Oh,
when you come
we
home,
talked about this one
there's
too.
a puddle on the ground. Are you firmly convinced what happened? Most people, no. You see that there's 2 sticks in the puddle. Are you firmly convinced what happened? No. You see there's the puddle, 2 sticks, and 2 pieces of coal. Are you firmly convinced what happened? No. You see there's a puddle, 2 sticks, 2 pieces of coal, and a carrot. Are you firmly convinced what happened?
You
No.
remembered the
There's a
carrot.
scarf. There's a top hat. And finally, there's a frosty name tag. So this line of questioning was basically there to kind of elicit at what point did people make the connection, oh, it's a snowman, it's a snowman and therefore the snowman melted. That's what we're getting at here.
Gray, you've never watched or G Ray, you've never watched Suits? So Suits is literally that. It's about a kid who went to law school and he has a great memory, and he ended up getting kicked out of law school, so he never was able to pass the bar. He gets a job as an attorney and works for a big firm, and for many years, quote unquote seasons, he practices law as an attorney, but hasn't actually passed the bar. It's a good show, but I mean, it's just the same storyline. So yeah, here's the snowman thing. But the funny part about the snowman story is that he's talking about that there's this snowman that melted during spring break.
Most people got there at the carrot.
Yeah.
I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. I gotta tell you, it took me a while. It took me like to the scarf. In part I couldn't hear all that well. I kept being like, is he saying coal? Did he say carrot? So it did take me a minute. But that one too, there were some people that kind of remained a little bit questioning, a little bit skeptical of this example. Like, well, I still don't necessarily know. Like, I don't know the circumstances. I would want to see, like, was there an eyewitness? Is there something on camera somewhere? Was there snow on the ground when I left? So overall, relatively good from a defense standpoint, amount of skepticism from a lot of the jurors that didn't need to be prompted necessarily by the defense. When it was prompted by the defense with the whole story about the unlicensed lawyer, that really, I think, opened a lot more doors. But plenty of people were willing to have those kinds of questions, stay open to those kinds of questions, even without the prompting from the defense. The part of Mr. McClelland's questioning that was probably the most alarming to me is he's asking about credibility and what sorts of things would you look at to judge credibility. And so, this one kills me because you get all the stuff that just makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. You look at body language, you look at how confident are they, you look at have they repeated the story, you look at are they making eye contact, like all these things that are really, really bad indicators of credibility, right? Because everybody's kind of different, and it's just the situation is abnormal. People on the stand, unless you're a professional witness, typically aren't going to behave the same way that you would in everyday life. So it's not a good baseline anyway. And you run the risk of drawing bad inferences about somebody just because they're different, or maybe you think they're weird or something like that. This is where Amanda Knox really comes to mind. Police didn't like how she behaved in the period after, like right after her roommate was discovered dead, and ultimately, suspicion landed on her and that whole nightmare that she went through. So that I hated that. But there were at the same time jurors again who were like, no, the important thing is consistency. Are the statements consistent and are they corroborated? Is there other evidence that can back them up?
That is good. That's huge that the jurors are saying that. Are the statements consistent and are they corroborated with actual evidence? That's from the jury. So, the potential jurors. So that's good.
Certainly gives me hope because yes, that's pretty much gonna just say the only real clue to credibility there is is it substantiated? Is it corroborated? If it's not, guys, it's a toss up. You trust that person, you don't trust that person. And with people that you know really well, okay, you know, you can have better or worse bases for drawing that type of conclusion. But with a witness you've never met, somebody that is just, again, in this kind of special context, out of the blue, yeah, you don't have that kind of trust to be able to rely on just their say so. So credibility really, in my mind, depends a lot on substantiation, on corroboration. And fortunately, there were at least a few jurors who indicated that that would be important for them. Yeah, the psychic guy was insisting you can just feel their energy. That's how you know. He went to, well, you better be ready to get confused. So I wouldn't expect him to be a big decision maker, obviously, or a big troublemaker. Obviously, you never know what's going on behind the scenes. Just because, you know, I've seen the system from this side and it's a criminal conviction, me that I'm coping with gallows humor.
Talking.
So that was just another instance where the answer to that question is not so important. The point of asking it was the priming, to get that into the jury's mind. That was an effective and interesting way to go, just because so many people, I think, do have experience with those processes. And I'm thinking particularly of some, oh boy, you know, it's these dust for months, and then they deny it routinely, forcing you to go through the appeal process to send it up the chain before you can finally get the approval that you're clearly entitled to. This is kind of, from my perspective, fairly normal processing of those types of programs. And so it did make me wonder what kind of information they'd gotten from the jury questionnaires. Like, if they knew, do they have a lot of people that have, you know, people that are veterans, people that are on disability, people that have relatives that have gone through that process, something like that. Because it did seem to be an issue that pretty much everybody was like, yeah, I'd like to trust the government, but doesn't mean I'm going to 100% of the time. The last thing that Mr. Razi brought up was that he wanted to make sure that the jurors were going to be able to focus on what's happening with the evidence, what's happening in the witness box, and the exhibits that are being presented and so forth, and not focused on what's happening in the courtroom. And his issue was, like, for example, if you happen to look over and you see that me and Mr. Allen are conversing about something, and we smile and we laugh, is that going to alarm you? You know, are you going to be sitting there thinking, this isn't funny? You know, what are you laughing about? Are you going to get mad at me and hold that against me, that I'm coping with gallows humor? So that was just another instance where the answer to that question is not so important. The point of asking it was the priming, to get that into the jury's mind. Don't make snap judgments about stuff like that. Don't hold things like that against people. And that, at least in theory, will benefit the prosecution as well as the defense, because that focus really does need to be on the witness box and what's happening there.
All right, I think that was like the biggest parts of her notes that I haven't been able to watch the end of it because I ended up going live while she was still live. So there might be other parts at, you know, towards the end. But like I said, I want you guys to be able to go to both of those channels and watch them yourselves to get the entirety of it. I just wanted to touch on some of the biggest parts of the day that seemed to be pretty consistent through everybody who was in the courtroom. It's actually probably one of the most consistent days of note takers that I've seen. Even though if some picked up on a little bit of, you know, something that the others didn't. I think it's just about perspective. But I was pretty pleased that everything was very consistent. So Andrea Burkhart will also be back in the courtroom tomorrow. Lawyer Lee will be back in the courtroom tomorrow. Barbara McDonald will be back in the courtroom tomorrow. And Lana from Truth and Transparency will be back in the courtroom tomorrow. So we will do another just recap of the day sometime tomorrow afternoon, my time, which will be evening Eastern time. And I know that Lana had said that in about an hour from now, 10:30 Eastern, she is going to be going live to review her notes, even though she did do a live just to kind of touch on some things. She's actually going to go through all of the notes. So make sure you guys hit up Truth and Transparency's channel to see her. She does a great job taking notes. I got to give it to her, even though, you know, sometimes I think Lana and I have a bit of a competitive streak. So I haven't been to the courtroom yet, so can't compare on that. But they're only looking to get 2 more people tomorrow, and then Andrea said that they are going to be going through all the outstanding motions. So hopefully they'll be able to have, stay in the courtroom for that. So as of right now, going into tomorrow, we have 14 of the 16, potentially only 13. There is one who's kind of pending, based on childcare, and they said that the attorneys will make a decision about whether they're going to disqualify her tomorrow. But Bob's going to be there tomorrow. I thought he wasn't going till Friday, Scarlett. 10, I am going back and forth on whether I am going to Indiana. If I am, it would be in November. I'm still playing it by ear. I'm not 100% right now whether I can make the trip, but as of right now, I plan on going, but I'm back and forth, so I don't want anybody to hold me to it. I may prefer just to do this the way that we've been doing it instead of trying to disrupt a lot of things that are happening in my own life. So we'll see. Oh, Bob changed his mind and is going tonight. Perfect. So then we'll have Bob tomorrow. He says he's on his way because he doesn't want to miss the hearings after jury selection. Good. Okay, so we'll have another attorney that's in the room too. All very good, reliable, in my opinion, reliable people that we're hearing the information from, which makes it so much easier on our end when we don't have the transparency to be able to actually see this shit for ourselves, because Judge Gull won't change her mind. Hopefully, in the next couple of days, somebody stands up and argues in front of her, saying that we need to have cameras in the courtroom, and she reconsiders it. But don't hold your breath, because you know how that goes. But either way, I will pop over to Truth and Transparencies later to see her notes, and then we will be back tomorrow to just recap what happens on day 2 and just, see what everybody has to say, see what happens with the hearings and the motions that were filed. If the jury's going to get to go and see what happens, or if jury's going to get to go see the scene and the surrounding area, and if so, how that's going to work for them. So go enjoy the rest of your Monday. I love you guys. Thank you guys for being here. I know you guys have 1,000 other places that you could spend your time, and you choose to spend your time here hanging out with me. Some of you, although reluctantly, but you do it anyway. I appreciate every one of you, even whether you comment, whether you don't. I appreciate you guys all being here. It means more to me than you guys will ever know. So go enjoy your Monday. I will see you mañana.
Do you dare to follow me down? Head into the unknown, down the rabbit hole, where it stops, no one